could
Hey, what's up,
just to let you guys
everyone?
know,
It is your girl, Danielle here, representing Call to Action with your weekly segment here, Chill to Action, hanging out. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us on this Monday. We usually do chill on a Sunday, but we're here on a Monday night, so thank you all for spending time with us on this fabulous Monday night. As always, I have my co-host with me, Mr. Paul Denuzio.
What's up, everybody? I'm glad to be here on this very special Monday edition of Chill to Action with a very special guest, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, and also we have our third co-host from Call to Action with us tonight, Miss Alex Mack.
Oh my gosh, it's my first episode here with you guys, and I'm here with a rock star. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Let's get at it. I can't handle it.
Yes, y'all, we have a Schmodown legend in the house. And anyone who wants to argue with me about Rachel Cushing not being the greatest of all time, we're in for a big debate. So I'd like to introduce you all to Miss Rachel Cushing.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yay, we're super pumped. Rachel, you've been a part of the Schmodown for a long time. So just first question off the bat, Rachel, why Schmodown? What got you into it?
It all started with a friendship that I started with Christian Harloff before Schmodown was a thing, before even, the Schmoes movie show was a thing. And we used to geek out over movies together. And I started following him, and I followed his whole career. And when he started doing the Schmodown, I was like, I've got to go sit in the audience and cheer these people on because these are my kind of people. And, the story, I was whispering answers under my breath. Clark Wolf heard me, and 3 years later, 2 belts later, that's kind of where it all started. But for me, it really is rooted in a absolute love of film. And I've had that my whole life. And I went to film school on the East Coast before moving to LA to pursue a career in television and film. And to find other people that loved it as much as I did was it was such a wonderful, amazing feeling. And that extends to the fans too, because to have followers and fans who I can interact with about that love is it's just wonderful. It's such a common thing that we can all bond over together.
Yeah, it's been really amazing to kind of see this whole Schmodown community grow and evolve from what it's gone into. I mean, you've been in it for a very long time. You've seen where the fandom has come and gone, where the Facebook page has grown and different things like that. So to see these little clusters of groups, like we've always been a big fan of Team Action, Action Army, all of that. Is that a surprise?
What?
So, is it surprising to you to see like these pockets of fan groups be so active inside of the community?
I think not once I understood wrestling a little bit better. But it's not even just about wrestling, it's about storytelling. And I do work in television, and I'm a storyteller. I consider myself a storyteller. So I understand what that means. And it means having a bunch of characters come together and interact and have different personalities and points of view. And the characters in the Schmodown, like in wrestling, just have exaggerated versions of those. So of course, as fans, and for me included, like I gravitate towards certain players because I like their point of view. I like their approach. And, whether that's heels or faces or tweeners or whatever the names are, it's about seeing a little bit of yourself in people and cheering them on for that. And just, it's about relating. And that's always something that I think storytelling comes down to. And wrestling does that in a very important way, and Schmodown does. So to have all the different fans of different people, they relate to the Outlaw or to the Fife Club or to the Action Boys or whatever it is. Like, it makes sense to me, and it just heightens the show in ways that I honestly never expected to see, but is really cool to see.
Oh, sorry to, I know I'm sure you have like a million and one questions, Danny. Like you said, you were kind of going off that, Rachel. You were that one person that was like whispering answers under your breath and everything, sitting next to another legend, obviously Clark Wolf, going through this process, and you loved being part of that community, everything. Was it the knowledge that really got you attracted to it, or was it like the storytelling aspect? Because obviously I know you work more behind the scenes and you understand the why and everything behind creating these characters and the story behind it. But when it comes down to the knowledge and you love these movies, and you've been a fan of you're a big movie person, obviously. But which aspect of it really attracted you more? Would you say?
I was almost always more interested in the trivia aspect. Not as a viewer, I definitely understood the characters and the stories, and what Christian was building was so unique in that way. But it's always, and I've been very open about it, the most uncomfortable part of it for me, because I'm not an actress. I'm a terrible poker player. I wear my heart on my sleeve. Like, so it's difficult for me to sort of put myself aside and take on a character and be a part of a show where people aren't acting, interact them with, and that took a lot of getting used to. And for me, there was so much pressure in just walking out from behind the curtain to sit up there in front of cameras and knowing people are watching. That was hard enough, and then to, on top of that, also supposed to be playing a character and remember that there's certain ways I should be acting depending on who I was playing. Like, all of that was very strange and difficult for me. I got better, I think, as I went along. So as a player, I was like, bring on the trivia. This is what I'm good at. This is what I can do. This is what I can handle. And I can kind of, when the cameras aren't there. But, I never really embraced doing promos and things like that. And cut scenes were hard. But I trusted Christian implicitly, and I understood its place in the show. And I think, like I said, or I hope I got better at it as, my years went on.
Well, I think you definitely did. I was actually going to ask you, one of my next questions would be, since you came on and were all trivia right away, given that you came out with Ken Knapsack, who is a definitely wrestling guru as well, and Christian, having written for WWE, did they give you any advice on how to bring out the inner you, as far as because I know, for example, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the wrestler, always said the best wrestlers were amped up versions of themselves. In a way, it was you took themselves and you just take it out to 100 degrees. Did you seek their advice, and were they instrumental in helping you try to develop that in the Schmodown?
Definitely, because I think what it came down to, for me anyway, and it's different for every player that you talk to, it came down to confidence. And that was the thing that both Ken and Christian and I ended up with a kind of ritual, which was, before I played, he always sought me out somewhere in the studio, or, and we would always take a couple minutes just to talk. And his advice was always approximately the same thing, but it was, let everything else go, the pressure, the comments, the trolls, the weight on my shoulders, all of that stress that, heightened my anxiety about the whole thing. He was like, that stuff, just breathe and you can put it aside, because you and I both know you're really good. This stuff, and you can get out there and deliver the answers. So we would have a lot of conversations about that. And then the conversations would evolve a little bit once I got a little more comfortable into, now you know what you are capable of. Now believe in what you're capable of, and now go show me what you're capable of. And that also was in the character, and so there were times when I was more confident in my abilities, and would occasionally come out and say stuff like, I'm going to win this match, or whatever I would say. Like the moment where I said in the buzz that I was the best Inner Geekdom player, he was so happy I said that. In the moment, this is kind of ridiculous, but what the hell? I've worked my ass off. I have the Inner Geekdom belt, so I'm going to go ahead and say this in this moment. And when I first started out, I don't know if I ever would have said that. So.
And being that, Rachel would have been the most mind-blowing heel turn ever. There
are a lot of dream scenarios that people talk about when it comes to certain Schmodown things, and I think Rachel Cushing, you're a part of a lot of those dream scenarios where a heel turn, or Rachel Cushing heel turn, would have been amazing. Rachel Cushing and Andrew Ghai as a team.
That was the other one.
Amazing. I think that a lot of people in the Actor Army would have lived to see those two moments.
Yeah, I said from the get-go, if I ever turned heel, it would have to have been some kind of heel that had never been seen before. It would have had to have been some kind of silent heel, almost kind of like what Kevin does. Maybe I could have pulled off, but I'm not a smack talker. I'm terrible at it. And never.
A lot of the greatest heels, though, I mean, it's not about that. I mean, it's not just what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. It's almost like the amount of control and restraint that's involved. And obviously, like one of your big pros is that you're not, like you said, you're not an actor. But I mean, like, because, I mean, I think that's what makes you a big fan favorite is that we feel everything with you. And you're in one of those situations where it's just like, the less you speak, the more loud it seems when you do speak, if that makes sense. That's what everything you said always came across like that. So
there you go. Jake Yakavetta saying, seeing your growth emotionally, becoming more comfortable was just as impressive as your knowledge. And I would agree 110% with that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, I surprised myself not to, get emotional about it or but I've changed so much as a person, and at my age, I just, you don't think that that's going to happen in your life. Things were going along in my life in such a way that, like, it was fine. We were good, and I was who I was, and this introverted person, behind the scenes person, all of that was great, and I was comfortable with that. But this opened up doors that like, if you would ask me 2 years prior if I'd ever do something like that, I'd bet money I wouldn't for something like that. So to me, the fact that the biggest takeaway, aside from the people that I've met, is the fact that I could do something like that, and I never would have believed that I could at the start. I really thought I'd be one and done. People are like, "Oh, you just say it." I'm like, "No." I'm like, that first Nerds Watch match, I'm like, I'm gonna walk out. People are gonna be like, "Who the hell is she?" I'll do okay at best. We'll lose. I'll never play again, and nobody. I got myself on the back. I did it once. I gripped I put my money where my mouth was about women playing the league, and then I'll just disappear into the sunset. And so it's mind-boggling that what happened after that. So
yeah, Rachel, definitely. I don't think you're a footnote. You're a whole chapter in Schmodown history.
And it's a great inspiration.
Chapter. So you talked about Nerds Watch, and one of my all-time favorite team action entrances happened during a Nerds Watch match, and that's when you and Andrew came out with your moms. How did you all react to that?
Here's the thing, like, and not to pull all the curtains aside, but I feel like fans know this. Ben Bateman and Andrew Ghai are sweethearts.
They're the best.
They are lovely guys, and when I walked into that studio that day, and they were with their moms, and they're moms, I'm like, you guys are so cute. Moms are so cute, and like, this is just, I was like, I didn't know what was happening story-wise. I mean, I kind of figured it was a ruse, but at the same time, I was just like, this is like the sweetest thing in the world. But I just played into, because they brought a different kind of heel to the show, and I love them for that. And I loved their, just such insane cockiness, and the sunglasses and the big grins and the "we're better than you, but we're gonna pretend because our moms are here." It's kind of brilliant, and it's honestly one of my favorite entrances ever. And to have been kind of a part of it's really cool.
It's really tough to go against a Shire Wolves entrance. That girls' entrance was amazing. Definitely the #1 entrance ever in history, in my opinion. So I think we're all going to miss those entrances.
It was both Clark and I. She's a far more extroverted. She's an actress. She's a host. She's somebody that loves theatrics and putting herself out that way. I found entrances and costumes and cosplays kind of a good way for me to deal with my nerves. Like, if I can almost disappear into a character physically, costumes and things like that, I'm like, that actually helps me. And I never would have thought I'd be like a cosplay person. I didn't enter the league thinking that was going to happen. Like, I saw what Miss Movies and Stacy were doing, and I was like, that's really cool. But I didn't really see myself that way until I did the Galadriel thing, and I was like, oh, this actually like helps me. And I was looking for things to help me. But when I teamed up with Clark, it was taking it to a whole nother level. And the Girls Run the World entrance was so important for so many reasons, because that was when we were getting the most kickback from fans at that point, and that was when I was having the hardest time with comments and things. And like, I had won the belt. We were the first women to win belts, and it didn't feel good because we were getting so much negativity associated with that. And it should have been a proud moment. It should have been a good moment. And it took me personally months to sort through how I felt about a lot of that. And when it came down to our first defense, Clark and I realized that, screw all of that for all intents and purposes. We won the belts. Whether or not we defend them, we're proud of having won them, and we're proud of having been the first women, and we're proud to be amongst all of these women. So it all just sort of coalesced into a statement we wanted to make, regardless of whether or not we won that match. Winning that match helped, I'm aware, but that was a culmination of having dealt with a whole lot of extra, which frankly, almost none of the guys had ever had to deal with when they won belts. Like it was a different level, and it was a different thing that it was very difficult. But the entrance was our way of working through it, or one of the ways of our working through it. So.
And speaking of strong Schmodown women, Janine was so honored to be part of that.
Hi, Janine.
It's something I just kind of want to mention is that, I can't, obviously, neither one of us, aside from you, obviously have been in Schmodown, and we've never been under that kind of intense scrutiny. We've talked about how you're the GOAT. You're one of the not most iconic players in all Schmodown history. But also I think, like you mentioned, is that unfortunately, there was a minute where there was that conversation where it's like, oh, who's the best Schmodown player? And there would be like, oh, the best female competitor is this person. And, which is such a stupid thought process behind it. No, like the best competitor, period. Regardless whether you're male or female, obviously, whatever the situation is. You really help break down a lot of those barriers, both you and Clark, and you really solidify the fact, like, hey, we're the best team that's ever been. And so far, and it's just amazing. What's inspiration towards more female competitors to really, just do better overall.
Yeah, that was the important message. It was, that we could go toe to toe, that it wasn't about men and women. And if we can get to a place where people stop talking about it with those conditions, with those quotes, like, I remember I was the first woman to get a perfect first round. I was like, yes, it's strange, but I'd love to get to a place where that's not the first thought that jumps into people's head. It's, oh, she got a perfect first round. Now great company with the Bibianis and Drew McWeeneys of the world. Like that's, our goal is to push this to a point where it's just about people who are great characters, who put on a great show, who know their movie trivia backwards and forwards. And so the caveat of, first women to do something, or a woman or man to do anything is dropped completely, which is why so many of us were against a women's league when that was a thing that was being talked about. We were like, there's zero reason for that. With the one exception of there was talk about it for it being more comfortable for women. A lot of women have a hard time coming and playing in the Schmodown because they don't feel comfortable with it. They know that
don't blame them.
It's difficult. It's, we get more scrutiny, we get worse we get comments that are about how we look.
Right.
It's not even like why is that in the comment section? It should be about how we played and things like that. And a lot of women in the YouTube space just have a higher, steeper mountain to climb to get respect. And so a lot of women are like, why would I, want to stick my neck out for this? So there was talk at different points, and I think in the future maybe there'll be like all female Patreon matches in certain ways, because when it's all women up there, you feel like you're in it together, which is also another part of why I think our entrance was very important, to show how many of us there were, and how many of us helped build the league and were being an important part of it, but also being up there together. There's strength in numbers. So I get it, but the goal, like in life, is that it's not about gender. If you're good at something, you're good at something.
Right.
110%. I want to break into something a little more speculative now, more fun. The nuke happened. Absolutely. It's going to happen, rather. It's been dropped.
Right.
And we have...
No one really cares about it, right?
Yeah, no one cares about that at all.
Yeah, is it really happening?
People are scurrying around the studio when they're shooting matches, going, "What is this? How's this going to work? Who's going to do what? What's going to..." Like, you should see the players. It's interesting.
Now, we know you've retired as a player, but would you have any interest in being around as a manager? Any interest in it?
The difficult part of that for me is, what's a manager? For me, and at least up until this point, maybe this changes, I don't know, but like, their support, which is important, but mostly their mouthpieces. And I think anybody who's ever seen me on the show realizes I'm not really good at that side of things. That's not something I'm comfortable doing. And I'm not really a big fan of, like I don't want to go and stand in a studio and have Jay yell at me and me try to yell back. Like, there's this aspect, like, I don't think you guys can picture it any more than I can picture it.
I would be psyched to have you anywhere, whether it be as a manager, manager, or heck, just like hanging out at the desk reading questions on exhibition matches or whatever. Down the road. But can we maybe sometimes see you in the future? And
absolutely, it's a family. I mean, you guys are a part of it too. Like, I couldn't quit this cold turkey. It would feel like a hole in my life. So I've already, been at the studio. I've seen a bunch of the tournament matches, some of which you guys have seen and some of which you haven't yet. And it's important to me to still be there and to cheer people on and to help out in ways that I can. A little peek behind the curtain. You guys know that when challenges happen, whoever's at the desk are two people that deal with the challenge, but they always have one of the other players who's in the audience act as a third judge. And I've done that many times. I've been part of those decisions. I am calling a match that's coming up. You'll see me in front of the camera for calling a match, which I really enjoy doing because there's no pressure doing that, really. So I like doing that. So yeah, I really do hope to eke out some sort of place for myself in the future. And as far as the nuke goes, my favorite thing about it is that, like, at a certain point, you listen to Christian talk and like spitball different ideas, and a lot of times you're like, yeah, that's nuts, that's crazy, what are you talking about? Like, it flies over your head. Then he came up with anarchy, and I think anarchy is the single best thing he's ever. It revitalized the teams division. It brought people together that you never would have believed. Like, it created new kinds of superstars, and it just did things that made me stop second guessing what he says. So when he came up with the nuke and the idea that next season it's not just about teams or just about players and teams, but that factions will war with each other in real stakes and real points up for grabs, and that that people will be duking it out to draft players. I mean, the potential there is just so endless to me, and he's always been so good with letting the play dictate the storylines and not the storylines dictate the play. And this is just another example of how that will happen. So I'm excited to literally sit back with my little bag of popcorn and watch them all like go crazy. That's what's gonna happen.
I will counter one thing about anarchy being the greatest thing. It did break all of our hearts because it broke up Bet and Drew.
It broke up Team Action.
It broke up Team Action. So that broke our hearts a little bit. But I digress.
Our dads have divorced.
Yeah. It was very sad.
It was an emotional moment. I'm not gonna lie, I cried. I probably cried in all of Schmodown. I cried twice. One was actually during that one because I was like, because it was so scary out of nowhere. But same time when you and Clark won.
Oof.
Like, you guys came out during the thing, and I was like, "This is amazing." But when you actually won, I was like, not just as a female, like, or whatever it may be, but oh my gosh, I don't want to cry right now. This is so annoying. I don't want to be that person. I'm not gonna cry. I'm gonna do this for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
I think.
Well, we I kept saying it earlier that, I mean, like, we were there with you, feeling it for you, and we know obviously everyone in Schmodown works crazy hard. It's ridiculous. And the amount of effort that, some of these people have put into it, but also you put in so much effort. You were not only, you're one of the first like major competitors to not only succeed in IG, but you were in singles and teams simultaneously at some point. And that is like unheard of. And seen you rock it not only with like the double belts. I was like, she worked so hard to get that. She deserves it. 100%. And knowing everything going behind the scenes was really the cherry on top. So it was one of the greatest moments in all the Schmodown, period.
Absolutely.
I think between Clark and I, Mike and Roka, we have all proven that crying is perfectly allowed in the Schmodown.
100%. Crying is totally
let it out, and and like you said, it's indicative. I mean, we work so hard and we pour so much of ourselves into it, and luck's such a part of it, and dreams are crushed all the time, and
yes,
stories are that we keep getting knocked down and then we come back, and when you come back from a difficult knockdown and you make it all the way to the belt and you win the belt, like that's just such a journey to go on, and it's so cathartic in that moment, because I mean I know the Outlaw is the iconic version of this story. He's been knocked down and he's come back, and he's been knocked down and he comes back, and he always comes back, and he always comes back with such intensity. And like his pre-game is like sitting in the corner by himself with his headphones on, and he's just amping himself up, and it's always so tense and it's always so important. And then to see like what happened on Saturday happen, and he just it all came pouring out of him afterwards. I'm like, I get that. And those of us that are in it get that feeling. And it's really great to hear, though, that the fans get that too, because they're on the journey with us. And that's, I think, what makes the show so unique and important, is this interaction that we have with the fans. It's personal. It's, all revolving around a thing that we love together. And it's recognizing, the effort and the time and the heart and soul that people put into it. That's, I really can't think of too much else out there in the entertainment world that quite has all of that wrapped up in one thing, the way that Schmodown has it.
Unless you're like Tom Hanks from what was it? From what was that movie? The League movie. It's like there's no crying. I just kind of want to be like, there's no crying in Schmodown. Obviously,
there's no crying in baseball, but there is crying in Schmodown.
The guys cry more than the ladies.
You give a damn.
Yeah, I mean, you put your heart and soul into this, and I do think because it's still a sort of yourself inside of this element, it's hard not to take it personally. It's hard not to take your losses personally, it seems like, and it's hard not to take interactions with people personally. So it's really interesting to see where this fandom has grown, and it's getting better. It's definitely getting better than where it was. And we all know where we stand on that side of the fence. And I think that we all just are getting better at understanding that these are people that are putting their all into it. These are individuals that put just as much time and effort into it as they do anything else. Look at all of the sweet little videos that Mike and Shannon are making for Facebook, and all of the little like Kaiser in a car with coffee and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see these players interact with certain people. So Rachel, you've taken a big brunt of a lot of the stuff at the beginning, but you've done such a great job at being such a strong influence for people in the Schmodown, to watch people grow in this league and to see people compete under pressure. So just a big thank you to you for dealing with everything that you've dealt with, and just for keeping this league alive and fresh and fun.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And now is the time that I'm going to break into a little game I call This or That. We only got a few this time here, but I explained it off the camera. But if anybody's here for the first time, I will give Rachel 2 items from anywhere in any walk of life, and she will get to tell me what she prefers, or she can answer it any way she wants. She's the guest, really. Anyway, she'll just have to justify it just a little bit. So the first question we always ask on this particular podcast, and it's one you've answered before, but I'm going to make sure we get this updated. Are you Team Ghai or Team Trader?
There is a correct answer. Just want to remind you. Just want to keep that little nugget in there.
Okay. As much as I admire Trader and what he's accomplished, I will say that a what if I play in my head all the time is if Ghai and I had teamed up for Anarchy. I don't know what that would have looked like for sure, but when it was announced behind the scenes that was likely to happen, he was so excited, and it actually got me really excited. And I like that would have been one of the epitomes of what Anarchy did, like a Snyder and Draco. Like, what? That shouldn't work. And so Ghai and I teaming up could have been bizarre in a lot of really fun ways. I would not have gone heel. I think the question would have been, how much could I have reined him in? So it's something we won't know, unfortunately. But with all that said, sorry, Ben, but I'm Team Ghai.
You have chosen, in the immortal words of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, you have chosen wisely.
Yeah. I think you would have gotten that reference, Paul. Movies, right?
Second throw out there. Legolas or Gimli?
Oh, you're talking to a girl who has elvish tattoos, so it's not even a question. It's Legolas all the way.
I figured that was the case. I'm the dwarven guy, so it's me for Gimli, but throw it out there. Okay.
Well, sorry.
Question. Game of Thrones prequel. No, I'm sorry. I said Schmodown question, then I went to Game of Thrones. I'm looking at the wrong line. So we'll go Schmodown question first. Studio or live event?
To play, studio. Yes. To go to live events. Playing in live events was one of the significant factors in why I stepped down. It was, I fully believe that all of us as human beings should push ourselves and try new things, and it's important to do that. But I also think you should know your own limits, and I've made no secret about my dealing with depression and anxiety and things like that. And playing live pushed me past a point that was healthy for me. It's just the pressure of the situation. And the live events I was playing in were really high stakes live events too, and that's why the free for all was the easiest one for me, because it was a feeling of there's so many competitors. I don't feel like the pressure, the weight on my shoulders of she's defending a championship or whatnot, like the way that I felt the Inner Geekdom one was. That was kind of crushing for me, and unfortunately, maybe I'll be able to find a place to do it in the future. I don't really know, but where my life was at the time, unfortunately, other people thrive on that energy, and the energy and the fans are amazing to them and being a part of them in that way. But playing under those lights and that pressure, the added pressure, like things would leave my brain. Like I wouldn't be able to answer questions that I know the answers to. And in those high stakes situations, you can't have that happen. So it was just too much for me, unfortunately.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, the one I asked you earlier when I told you about it, let's go do it now. Captain Kirk or Captain Jean-Luc Picard?
I have to say Picard, because I grew up on The Next Generation, the TV show. I grew up on the movies too, but not so much the original, like Shatner and Kirk and whatnot. I mean, he's very iconic, but there's just, I just have all these memories of watching The Next Generation with my sister and my parents, and every week in and out, and the cliffhangers always killed us. And I will say CBS All Access, so I've taken my money now. I had held out, I wasn't paying for that service, and then they made Picard, and so come January I'll be paying for CBS All Access.
You're not alone on that. It's not alone on that.
Yeah, I didn't watch Star Trek growing up, but The Next Generation is on Netflix right now. So I want to watch that because Picard looks really good. For someone who never watched anything Star Trek, Picard looks amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't age. I don't know what's up.
He looks great.
Okay. Here's an interesting Schmodown one again.
Okay.
JTE misspellings and JTE speak, shall we say, or Tom Dagnino speech?
JT-isms.
JTE-ism.
That's what I say. JTE-ism.
Yeah, it's true. If you'd asked me a few years ago, I would have said JT actually become he's a really cool, interesting. He's actually kind of that weird in real life too, but in a warm and fun way. And I will say that what he did for the league, I think, which was very important, there were some tendencies of heels at the beginning make their insults a little personal, and there was a lot of feeling out the best way to handle the heel versus face dynamic. And what I think Tom did was he introduced a sort of absurdist part of it, an exaggeration, like his insults and his takedowns and his comebacks to different people were always rooted in like really kind of absurd things, and so it made it funny but also heelish. And like I really appreciated that because there's a fine line. Actors and actresses handle it better than those of us that aren't, but like there were times when a heel would say something about somebody in a personal way and it felt like a personal attack, and even though it was for the show, I like that Tom and Ben and Ghai have done the same thing, and Snyder's gotten better at it too. Like if you do it but you twist it a little bit, then it's not mean, it's heel but kind of funny in a way. Like I don't know how to describe it better than that, but that would never have happened if Tom hadn't led the way to get there, I don't think. And now I'm just dying to know what's going to come out of his mouth at any given moment. I don't know what it's going to be.
It's on a reality show. I am like, do I need to donate to a GoFundMe page?
Next Patreon level for a Tom Dagnino show. I love it.
After Game of Thrones, this or that already, Paul.
I have one more before I get to the Game of Thrones. One more Schmodown.
Oh, Game of Thrones is still a thing. What?
Whoa, pause really quick. This whole episode was almost a Game of Thrones episode.
This whole episode was almost a Lord of the Rings episode because I cannot wait to hear what you think about LOTR, the series coming up hot.
But before that, one more Schmodown, this or that. Heel of the Year, Andrew Ghai or the Digital Wheel?
I'm, let's just say, very glad I never had to deal with the Digital Wheel. I hate the idea of it. And most of the competitors did too, and I understand the fans' issues with it. I also understand the logistics of what was going on, but it's no. So I still think there's room for Andrew Ghai to win that award though, because we still have a whole tournament happening. So he could get up to all kinds of things, and he could absolutely take this year. But as of right now, I will go with Digital Wheel.
Awesome.
We got about 10 minutes left in this. So while we get Rachel's opinion on the new Lord of the Rings series coming up, y'all throw your questions in the chat. Make sure you get them in there before we wrap this whole thing up. So thank you all so much. Get that in there. Now let's go. Alex, go for it.
Oh my gosh. I actually, in preparation for this, when I found out that I was going to be on this, I actually I went back and re-listened to an episode that you did with Scrimshaw like forever in a day.
That was so much fun. Obsessed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I learned so much more about you, but I mean, like, I already knew, obviously, you're a fan of being part of Inner Geekdom and LOTR and everything. I didn't realize how in love with Tolkien you and your family are, which is so cool. Now, obviously, I mean, like, you've talked about specifically how Lord of the Rings has as such an impactful part of your life. But more specifically, how, I mean, like, going into what was like some of your most like passionate, excited moments when it comes to LOTR that you like draw inspiration from on a regular basis? Are there moments in the books or characters or where you're like, I need to pull a Get Galadriel moment, I'm good, or anything along those lines where you need that inspiration?
Yeah, definitely growing up, I was very into fantasy and science fiction when it was not cool to be so. But it was always sort of that important thing to me, and by extension to my family too. So reading those books, I haven't done it in a few years, but I was reading them once a year, every year. And it was a comforting thing to do. It was something I could always pick up those books, honestly start on any page I opened it up to, and sort of have that like I'm home feeling, because this is a world that I know so well and that I love so much, and is the reason why I love Tolkien so much, and by extension Lord George R. R. Martin is because the detail is there. Like, it's so easy to get lost in that world because he describes it so well. And he was very much into history, and I am too. So there's that realistic, grounded, which is a funny thing to say about fantasy, but it has that context to it, that feel to it, that gravity.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was always just like I could always escape to Middle-earth, and that was very crucial in middle school and high school when things are hard. And
That's new.
this is your family. These are the things that you can go to. And I mentioned on Obsessed. Yes, there aren't a ton of female characters, but the ones that exist are pretty damn badass, and I love every time Eowyn says, "I am no man." Like, since I was 7 years old, I'm yelling that. Like, that's so important to me, and so, iconic, and I've loved that my whole life. And then elves, and I love the Silmarillion as well, which Christopher Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's son, put together after his death. There are fantastic female elvish characters in those stories too. So I always loved the majesty and beauty and wisdom, but also they're not infallible. They also make mistakes, and they go through these adventures and everything. And there's something about it that I related to so much. And to share it with my family is a huge, part of why I was able to get through some of the tough times, because I could not share that love with people in school because it's just not a cool thing to do. I could always with my family, so that made a huge difference too.
Having that kind of bond over with your family. I mean, it's something that's, not all families have, that thing that they can really connect with each other with. So that's amazing that you have that. Do you have, specifically going into this next show, you're in television, you're a massive fan of LTR. Is there like one aspect in particular? Because we can say we're just excited for the show overall, obviously, because it looks amazing. And there's so many women and female creators involved with it. So I'm super psyched. But is there like one aspect in particular? It's like obviously coming away from the movies and how great or bad, or whichever point of view you feel about them. Is there one aspect where you're like, they better not F this up? More than anything.
Yeah. It's not so much what they better not F up in specificity. It's that they made the correct decision not to tell a story that's already wrapped up in one we already know. Because there was early rumors they were going to do an Aragorn story, like of him being a young ranger, and I was like, nah, we're good. We have done Aragorn. We did him right. Like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. There are 3,000 years worth of history that Tolkien wrote. And I know with the estate, there were certain things you can and can't do. But when I found out they were going to do Numenor, which is during the Second Age, and it's about Aragorn's ancestors, I was like, yes, because you can build on the world we know, which I think is an important thing to do, but you can play in this world, and you can do all kinds of new and interesting things with new and interesting characters, because this takes place thousands of years before the story that we already know. And that's, for me, the playground that I'm excited about, that they can play in. And there'll be touchstones, because these are Aragorn's ancestors. So you know who Aragorn is and how he got there. So we're going to get to see some of that. And we're also going to get to see sort of the sundering of the elves and men, which I think is a very important piece of what Tolkien was writing about. And, elves are immortal, men aren't. And the god figure that Tolkien created called it a gift to men, to give them mortality. And the books struggle with, how is that a gift? And this time period is that's what the characters are struggling with. Like, men were feeling like, this isn't a gift, you're giving us death. Like, that's not fair. And there's just themes there that I think are a ton of fun. So I'm already very on board with pretty much everything I've heard. I've seen, like you said, the creators, the people that are behind, Brian Cogman being involved, Jay Mona directing the first. I'm just like, this is perfect. You just keep doing what you're doing, and I'm so on board.
I love the fact that they're pulling John Howe in, and like Tom Tippett and everything else, little historians.
Going to be involved.
Right.
He's one of the preeminent Tolkien historians.
Right.
So.
Perfect.
Well, it's just like, it's one of the very first shows movies, that you can really go into on a sci-fi fantasy level, just how amazing world building can be. It really can transport us. And I know, Danny, you were talking about Game of Thrones. It really laid down a lot of the prints to the success into Game of Thrones. But I know, Danny, you have 1,000,001 questions regarding GOT, so
hit it, Danny.
I but I know.
But unfortunately, we are almost out of time. So I'm gonna shoot it over to the chat. Let's go ahead and get some of those chat questions in. We got a couple of them in there. But before we do that, I would just like to shout out something that Dylan Camacho said inside of the chat. Not a question, but I do want it noted as a counselor. Dylan is a counselor. We all send him $5 every day in the group chat so he can counsel us with all of our day-to-day things. So Dylan in the group chat says, I love how open and honest Rachel is with discussing the importance of mental health. Awareness is half the game, true inspiration. And that really is something that's very true. So, big shout out to you, Rachel, for being aware and being honest about it.
Thank you. I think it's something people need to talk about. It's not something to be ashamed of. And it took me years to get to that point. So, yeah.
I think you're inspirational for talking about it, honestly. Like, as honest and forthcoming as you are, it's great to have it out there.
Yeah.
So I guess we're going to go right into it then. Dylan Camacho's first question was J.J. Abrams Star Wars or J.J. Abrams Star Trek?
Oh, boy. I'm going to get myself into trouble with one of these fandoms. The first time I saw Force Awakens, I didn't like it very much.
Okay.
A New Hope is my favorite Star Wars movie, and I expected more of J.J. Abrams in terms of it just felt like a regurgitation. I understand a lot more now as to the whys involved with that, and I do think he's introduced us to incredible characters. But I am, and I've been on Twitter and I've said this, so people will just have to deal with it. I am a Last Jedi fanatic. I think that movie is fantastic. So I like what Ryan Johnson did. I mean, I know JJ set the groundwork. I know he did, but Johnson took it to new and interesting places in my mind. Whereas the Star Trek reboot should never have worked. I don't know, it seemed like a terrible idea. The casting was good, but how do you tell a story with characters we already know and love and whose story we already know? How do you reboot that in a way? And they did it with the Kelvin timeline, and I was blown away by it. If you're talking about the first time I saw Force Awakens and the first time I saw Star Trek 09, Star Trek 09 blew me out of the water, and the Force Awakens I had to really kind of work my way through to get to a place where I liked that movie.
Okay, fair enough. James Spence wants to know, now that you're retired, is there anyone you wish you could have faced or possibly won in a future exhibition match against?
I mean, people were calling for it for a long time. It's sort of during a significant part of when I was and as scary as it would be to go up against the person most people consider to be the best of all time, I would have loved to have done it so that I could have beaten him, so that I could actually firmly establish my GOATness, but it was not to be, unfortunately. Never say never in the future, but I think that to be the best, you have to go up against the best, and he's often considered the best, so I wish I had had that chance.
That's true. Nico wants to know if you've heard of a young hobbit by the name of Robert Parker.
I have, and I do hope that at some point in the future, that if there is a Middle-earth Patreon match, that he will somehow be able to be involved with that, because again, if I want to be the best, I need to go up against the best, and I'm very aware that the Hobbit could give me a run for my money.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go.
Robert Parker's getting a lot of hype, y'all, and I'm here for it.
And would you ever want to compete against Mr. Stephen Colbert in a Lord of the Rings match?
Hands down. That guy is one of my celebrity crushes. No offense to my boyfriend, but when the clip was going around where he was correcting people about the right kind of elves, I was like, how have we never met, and how in another life you'd be the perfect man for me.
How are my ovaries intact? How are they just on purpose?
That we missed this opportunity. He's hysterical. I love him anyway, but the fact that he's as big a Lord of the Rings fan, book-wise, as I am, not just the movie. And of course, it's just not even remotely fair that he got to be in a Hobbit movie.
I have a quick question after this one.
Okay. Since Rachel, your friend Kevin Smets, do you think he can get the IG belt off Mike and possibly win Rookie of the Year over Paul Ayama?
I think Rookie of the Year is a way tighter race than it has ever been. I think certain things have to happen. Like I do think for Kevin to win it, he would have to win the IG belt, and Paul would have to lose the singles belt. And then I think there'd be a very good argument for Kevin to win. I also think the kid should be in the conversation. Maybe not quite as high, but who knows what happens in the tournament. I mean, this rookie class is ridiculous. And where geekdom is right now, like the top of the top levels, I think that when I was playing, Kevin and Mike were on the exact same playing field. It would always come down to the match and the luck factors, and the one time that you get the one off question that you might not know, compared to any other match. Like it's so close that it's not about one of them knowing more than the other. Should they go up against each other, it will be what happens on that day. And when the first time around, the lights were the factor, and they got to Kevin, and I guarantee you he's not going to let that happen again. So Mike's going to have to up it a little bit more, and then it's just going to come down to a letter. Hell, that's what it came down to between me and Mike the first time. That's the level of knowledge we're talking about here. So I think it's absolutely possible that Kevin could do it, but it's going to be a sight to see for sure. And that's a flip a coin situation.
The moment that will forever live down in Schmodown infamy.
Oh man, don't say
that was today.
So you can answer my question really quickly before we move on. It's a really quick one, and it's just to satisfy for me and me only. Did you like the Game of Thrones ending?
I like where it ended. I did not like everything that I don't think they got us there correctly. I'm actually a believer in Dany going Mad Queen. Like I kind of makes sense to me. They rushed it in the end. We needed another episode or two, or a reshuffling of scenes in such a way to really earn that decision. I think that they were getting there. I think that they had laid the groundwork, and then because there were just too few episodes, and they spent, as much as I love the set pieces, I would have liked a little less, Battle for Winterfell. If you take 5 minutes out of all the battle stuff and you give me another character scene, then you could have gotten us there better. But in where the characters, and even Bran is king, I don't mind. I understand why they would do that in the world that was a good idea. It's just the whiplash of like, wait, the battle just ended. How many months ahead are we now? And we're having this one council where everything's. It was like, wait, what? But like I said, the actual physical endings for most of those characters I liked. I just think they kind of whiffed on getting us there in a couple of ways.
Yeah, I love that answer. It makes me feel completely validated. Paul, throw that little Kevin snip, and then we're say our goodbyes.
I have one more question I'll throw out there. Kevin Smets. Rachel's hands down the goat, proud to call her a dear friend. An empty arena match challenge, just you and the Smasher.
We're doing Rocky and Apollo here.
That's what it sounds like.
I will go up against you, Kevin, anytime, anywhere. Empty arena, and we will just leave it all to speculation. That is.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna try to sneak in there. And just I'll be quiet. I'll just watch from back somewhere. But
I'll just hang out behind curtains, Paul. You know, do what you got to do in order to see this happen.
Make it work.
Woo! Alrighty, y'all. That's gonna wrap it up for us tonight on Chill to Action. We know it's a short episode, but we got time limits to run by. So thank you to everyone hanging out in the chat, especially those of y'all that just came on now. Abby, Albert, big fans, family of the Call to Action podcast, all of that good stuff. So again, thank you to everyone chilling out with us here on a Monday night. Catch us next Sunday on Call to Action with y'all. We're super excited about next Sunday. Next Sunday, we have our favorite, half of our dads, Mr. Ben Bateman will be here next Sunday. So we're super pumped about that. We can't wait for y'all to come in and hang out with us next Sunday for Ben. But for now, we're going to send a good sign off for Miss Rachel Cushing. Do you have anything to plug? Can we find you anywhere? Let us know.
Oh, I'm always up for the conversation, Schmodown, movies. It's Oscar movie season. It's my favorite season of the year. So like we can talk movies, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings. You guys know it. I'm just at Rachel J. Cushing, Twitter and Instagram. So come find me.
Yay! Thank you so much for coming on, Rachel. We really do appreciate it. Alex Mack, let us know where you're at, girl. Plug it.
Girl, I just got back from Orlando and I'm still kind of sleeping ish. It was amazing. But yes, okay. So you can find me on Twitter and our Facebook page. On Twitter, we have Called Action Pod, and on Facebook page, same thing, Called Action Podcast. But chances are, if you're interacting with Twitter, you're interacting with moi. So please subscribe to all those awesome places. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah. And last but not least, Mr. Paul Denuzio, where can we find you, buddy?
On Twitter, I'm at Paul_Denuzio. And also you can find me hovering around the Patreon for Team Action. So we have a lot of new stuff coming. Ben and Drew are reacting to every single one of the matches that they are involved with. They go in depth. It's a wonderful experience. They really go in depth, and it's a lot of fun. So join the Patreon. Help me keep my job with them because I love working for them. So absolutely.
Woo! Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. You know where to find me. You can find me on Twitter at Danny Joy with 1 E. Thank you so much, Rachel, again, from everyone in the Call to Action podcast. We love you so much. Guys, y'all, this is going to be it. Thank you all for hanging out with us on this Monday night. Y'all have a good one.
We salute you, as always.
Oh, yeah.